Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will call the Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee to order. And the first item on our agenda is to approve minutes for our January meeting.
Move to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Jernigan. Any discussion, corrections, or additions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. Mr. Beatty, our county trustee, will give the investment report.
Thank you, Mayor. You can see we didn't have any bidding events over the last month, and our LGIP rate is 0.24.
Oh, my goodness.
Point 0.24. Mr. Jernigan said no bad news. It's not 0.14. So that's the good news. It's 0.24.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
It was 0.35 last month.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you.
If you will please locate your fund condition report. Our Finance Director, Mrs. Nolan, will begin with the development tax report. And of course, she gave us this good news last month, but I guess it's okay to hear it again, isn't it?
2 months in a row, good news, it's still okay. All right, for total of January, we received $454,500, brings our total to $958,500 for the year. Of course, you know, the $300,000 we received about the first 5 days, so.
That's not beginning of a trend, we don't believe, is it?
Maybe.
Maybe.
No, it was apartments.
Okay, if you will move now, please, to the cash balances.
Total cash at the end of January was $179,465,000, with $150,257,000 being operating funds, $29,280,000 being borrowed funds. So we've got a lot of projects cleaned up in the schools. We should have another one cleaned up in the general capital projects by next month. We're slowly but surely cleaning all these up.
Any discussion on the cash balances?
I should probably know this, but 2006 ambulance station land, $21,000. Where is that left over from?
The Manchester. We have assigned to do.
Oh, no, oh, no.
Yeah.
Don't want to get into that again.
No, it's underway.
It's underway.
We done that.
Yeah.
The revenue report, well, I'll wait till I get there.
How much further are we till we're finished on the firing range?
It's very, very close to completion. Just a few loose ends. I don't think the sheriff wants to make an official date within weeks.
All right, let's move, please, to the revenue sheet.
On the general fund, you can see that on the little short side, comparing the general fund and the ambulance fund together, we're slightly behind the last 2 years, but ahead of the previous 3 years, comparing, you know, where we are total budget-wise, 55.46 compared to we're almost 57 last year at this time.
Move to approve the report.
Thank you, Mr. Sandlin, seconded by Commissioner Jernigan. Any further discussion or questions for Mrs. Nolan?
Sales tax, let me just mention this. We've got 6 months of activity for sales tax, and for the county overall, we are behind 5.58%.
From last year or from budget?
From last year, actual. Of course, the only fund that this really has an impact on is the schools. If we continue this trend for the next 6 months, the school will be down almost $2.5 million. But we're hoping that trend won't continue, that we are slowly but surely coming out.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Gentlemen, if you will turn please to section 3 in your notebooks, we will begin with the general fund budget amendments. And our first request is from the Agriculture Extension, Mr. Tuggle. Good evening, sir.
How y'all doing this evening?
And you came with a rather small one, but we have to go through the committee process because it does deal with salary.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
I was trying to, during December, we were trying to get some work finished at our livestock barn. And we had a little overtime, $100 worth of overtime, that we were trying to transfer from our part-time line to an overtime line.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Sandlin. Seconded by Commissioner Jernigan. We need to call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mrs. Duke, from Juvenile Detention.
Good evening.
Good evening, then.
Okay, I am asking tonight to move $2,521 from our attendance line item into 3 separate items that you see listed, simply because we've had some employees that had quite a bit of annual leave and comp time move on to greener pastures, and we had to pay them out.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Sandlin, seconded by Commissioner P. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
From the Correctional Work Center, Mr. Salandi,
Yes, ma'am.
welcome. I know you have been introduced to one committee, but welcome to the Budget Committee.
Thank you. How y'all doing?
Feeling good.
We're requesting in the Correctional Work Center to receive $12,000 from a lieutenant line position for inmates' clothing.
We saw this in public safety, and I'll make a motion to approve.
So it's not
I'll second it.
6,000. It's really, it's 6,000 from one to,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
6,000
sorry.
going
Yeah,
to prisoner
6,000.
clothing,
Exactly.
taking 6,000 from the lieutenant line item. I'm sorry, Commissioner P, seconded by Commissioner Schaefer. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
And thank you.
And you should consider yourself well received. You got your first request.
You'll be back.
From the ambulance service,
I'll do it.
and yes, this is something that we've done several times for medical coverage.
Right, this was a request for increase for other charges for services, $14,613, with $11,626 for overtime, payroll, and the balance going to the benefit line item.
So moved.
Commissioner Jordan, thanks.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Sandlin. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes. Gentlemen, section 6 in your notebooks. And Mr. Sandy, the Education Capital Projects Fund Budget Amendment, and also Mr. Clark. Good evening.
Good evening.
Your Capital Projects Amendment,
All right.
Mr. Sandy.
Our first amendment is for Fund 177, Capital Projects, the McFadden renovation. Last month, we addressed $223,604 went to fund balance in this fund due to savings on projects that were completed in fiscal 2009. We are asking that this $223,604 be budgeted so that we can start the McFadden renovation during the 2009-2010 fiscal year. The total project is estimated to be in the $400,000 range, and the balance of the funding will be in the 2010-11 budget. It's not a new project. We've shown it all along as we've been planning Central Magnet School. However, when we we moved up the John Coleman renovation, because when we were kind of at that budget time, there was still some discussion on the grade structure we would have at Central, which would affect what we did at McFadden. And this will enable us to pretty much have it finished by the time school starts, if we can get started on it now. So, and we won't request this 223 next year, but just so we can get started on it, we're asking to amend 223, $604 from Fund 177 fund balance and budget it to the McFadden renovation project as presented.
You gonna take them all as one, or you want them separate?
Shall we do this one separately?
Yes. You're the boss. Well, I
Please.
move to accept it.
Motion from Commissioner Bullen,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Jernigan. Commissioner P.
What all renovations are you planning on doing there?
We are replacing a lot of the floor covering, resolving some drainage issues on the outside, and waterproofing the basement. We have some water problems with water getting inside down there. And we also have some water and moisture infiltration through the walls, so we're gonna waterproof the entire outside of the building with elastomeric paint. Painting, some sealing, just a general facelift on the interior of the building.
Air conditioning's in good shape there.
Yeah, we
so
just
we're not-
replaced that through capital improvements 4 years ago, I think.
What are you planning on doing first? Because obviously you're not going to get the rest of the money or have the rest of the money until July 1st, correct?
That's correct, but we will start some of the interior stuff, but the project will run all summer long, so once that money's approved, then we'll,
So this will be finished then when school starts in August?
yes, that's correct.
Any further discussion relative to the motion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Eagle.
Yes. Mr. Sandvik, now we move to the general
Yes.
purpose school fund budget
All
amendment.
right. This series of amendments is designed so that we can purchase the Jordan house and land at Eagleville School. The school board requested an appraisal of this property, which is at 628 Highway 99 in Eagleville. It's adjacent to the school and owned by Nathaniel Jordan Sr. The property was appraised at $107,000. Staff received a letter from Mr. Jordan's agent requesting a purchase price of $145,000. We've negotiated it down to $120,000 with an additional closing cost not to exceed $4,000. Our board attorney, Jeff Reed, will preside over the closing, and as we have been doing, the land would be titled to the county, as we've been doing for several years. The principal, Ms. Rhonda Holton, has requested the purchase and mentioned a number of purposes for which the property can be utilized, including expansion for the horticulture program, possible a science room, field house site, possible dressing rooms. But Mr. Clardy brought a few maps showing where it fits on the site.
Around three sides here.
Yeah.
School's on three sides.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the highway's on the other.
Yeah. And we feel that it's a good piece of property to help us
I
complete
move
that
to
site.
accept this.
Second.
Commissioner Bullen, seconded by Commissioner Jernigan.
I would like to note that Commissioner Jeff Jordan wanted to note that
Yes.
it's not in relation to him or myself.
How does he pronounce that last name?
But
I just had a question. I mean, if you had an appraisal for 107 and no doubt this fits with the rest of the puzzle here on the property that we need to buy this property. But then we're giving 120 plus $4,000, which is a little high on closing too. So why do you offer 107?
Let me answer your second question first, and that's the closing cost being high at $4,000. we're not sure, where we'll have to have a survey or not, because we're bordering it on 3 sides. So, that will be determined by Jeff. So we made sure we got enough money, and that says a maximum of 4,000. It doesn't mean we're gonna spend it all, but I just wanna make sure we're covered on anything that may come up, during closing on that.
Well, there's no doubt it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. We're not tearing the house down and all that stuff, are we? I mean,
No,
we're using that and using the rest of the land for the
right.
horticulture spot.
And as far as appraisal being 107,000, it'll be very difficult for Mr. Jordan to find a comparable piece of property that small for he and his wife. And it'll be out of the price range of the 107 if whatever he's buying also will help him on his moving and relocation cost. And the school board thought that it would be fair to treat him like they wanted to be treated.
I remember on the properties we bought for the judicial center, we had appraisals, and the property owners had appraisals. And those appraisals sometimes can be very far off, so if this got to be an adversarial relationship, he could come in with an appraisal that could easily say 140 or 50. Then we'd be in court paying legal fees and court costs and damages and everything else. So 13,000 over appraisals, it's a lot less than it could be if he was not wanting to work with us on it.
Well, he's been a very good neighbor out there also, and if it happened to change hands from someone to ours, then we have a sewer plant right there just at the back of the house, and also the ball field lights would be, we could get a difficult neighbor in there to deal with, so we want to go ahead and tie it up before anything like that happens.
Mr. Sandvig, we do have a motion and a second, but you need to make sure in our minutes we do have the motion
Right.
relative to funding.
Right, yes. Well, the first funding amendment, and Mr. Clardy was comfortable with this, we are asking to amend $50,446 from the maintenance department, and then amend within our GPS capital outlay function, 76,100, $73,554, so that we will have the line item in the GPS budget. The second part is that we are requesting that the GPS school fund be reimbursed from Fund 177 capital projects for the $20,421 toward McFadden renovation design fees that we've paid out of the GPS budget. The third, I'm sorry, it's just 3. And then the final is requesting approval to purchase this property.
Okay, and of course, Commissioner Bull and Commissioner Jernigan, the funding is part of your motion and second, correct?
Correct.
Commissioner Schaefer.
The house that's there, it's about 800 square feet. Is it in shape that with minimal amount of work, the high school could, or one of the part of the school there could use it for something pretty much the way it is?
It is. It's in really good shape. They've taken good care of it. It's very clean. We would have to, of course, have a fire marshal's inspection on it, which might also involve putting up some exit lights at the doors and those types of life safety things that you would normally do in a assembly rated building. But it can be used relatively quickly.
Another question, how big are the double wide portables square footage wise? Do you know offhand? Is this bigger? They're not, are they 800 square feet?
Yes. They're a little bit bigger than that.
Okay. But this could easily be a classroom in there for any age level. Okay.
If Lisa could explain the 20,421 come out of the 141 account, and then we want to reimburse 170 or abate actually.
Up here, you created a McFadden project report, project in the Fund 177. Okay, they have spent some costs out of their general purpose school budget toward that project. So they're asking for reimbursement from 177 to,
Out of their line item there to go back into their line item.
right, so
Yeah.
so that way all the McFadden costs are together in Fund 177, and then it gives us a
And we've
little
got
extra money.
124,000 in our land account.
Gotcha.
Any further discussion relative to this motion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen,
Yeah.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yeah.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Ely.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Gentlemen, Section 8 in your notebooks, we have a resolution authorizing the creation of a recovery zone under the provision of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009. The mayor will present this along with the help of two gentlemen who are joining us at the table, and I will ask Mayor Burgess to introduce our guests.
Okay, we have with us Paul Latour from our Chamber of Commerce, and with him is Mr. Jim Murphy, who is with Bradley, Arant, Bolt and Cummings, the law firm in Nashville. What this is, and we're going to let Jim probably take most of the discussion here, but in any event, there has been an allocation for the state of Tennessee and then sub-allocated to all of the counties. The ability for two types of bonds to be issued under the basically the recovery zone authorization of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. But in any event, simplistically, Rutherford County in the recovery zone and economic development bond piece, we have a little more than $8 million, I believe, available. And then in the recovery zone facility bonds, we have a bit over $12 million available to be borrowed, and the money has to be paid back. This is not a grant process. We're gonna let Mr. Murphy talk about this. We don't have any people really yet identified that will use this money, but if we don't allocate this money and be in a position to use it, we won't have the opportunity to use it. And if we don't use it in a very short time, by May the 1st, and it may not be used, we're not telling you that it will be used necessarily, but we want to be in a position to use it if someone comes forward from one of the other municipalities or a private entity to do this, so that we don't hand all the money back necessarily to the state of Tennessee, which will happen, and they'll use it in some bigger, broader project if that does occur. So we're going to let Mr. Murphy sort of give you a little bit more input about how this works and what types of entities are eligible to participate in this.
Thank you, Mayor. As the mayor mentioned, the Recovery Zone Bonding Authority comes from the Stimulus Act, American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, and it authorizes two different types of bonds that can be used in recovery zones. And the first step, and that's what will be before you tonight, is to establish or designate an area as a recovery zone, because the Stimulus Act says that before you can issue the bonds, they have to be used in a recovery zone. And so this resolution would designate Rutherford County as a recovery zone so that the bonds can be used anywhere in the county. So that's the first step that you have to go through to be able to issue recovery zone bonds. And under the regulations that have been issued to promulgate the authority granted in the Stimulus Act, a recovery zone is basically an area is designated as having one or more of the following factors: significant poverty, unemployment, rate of home foreclosure, or general distress. Any area designated by the issuer, which in this case would be the county, as economically distressed by reason of the closure or realignment of a military installation, or any area which is designated as an empowerment zone or renewal community in effect as of February 17th, 2009. So again, the findings that you've got to make in order to designate a recovery zone that would be applicable to you would be things like increased rate of home foreclosures, unemployment, increased rate of unemployment, or general distress, which in the information provided to me by the chamber, there was indication that y'all had significant drop in building permit issuance, which would be one of the evidences of distress. It's anything that shows that your economy is suffering as a result of the conditions that the Stimulus Act is trying to remedy. So that's the first step, is designating a recovery zone. Then the bonds are two different kinds of bonds and can be used for two totally different purposes. The recovery zone development bonds are basically an opportunity to issue taxable bonds that can be used for public infrastructure type projects, and the federal government will give the issuer a 45% interest rebate, so that when you take the difference between taxable and tax exempt bonds right now are not very great. By the time you take that 45% rebate that you get back from the federal government, it makes the recovery zone economic development bonds cheaper to issue than tax exempt bonds. And so that was the mechanism that the federal government looked at to encourage some public projects, was basically you do taxable bonds, but you do them with this rebate. So that's the first kind, and those can be used for your traditional kinds of projects that will help stimulate recovery in the recovery zone, water and sewer, roads, any kind of public project basically can be used. You can use the development bonds for. The second type of bonds are facility bonds, and they're generally a form of private activity bond. And a private activity bond, I don't want to go into a long, detailed discussion of that because you'll all fall asleep because it's really boring kind of stuff. But private activity bonds are generally the kinds of bonds industrial boards issue for the benefit of private businesses. And back in the mid-'80s, the federal government put a lot of restrictions on the ability to issue tax-exempt private activity bonds. If they're going to be used for a private activity, in most circumstances, they're going to be taxable bonds, not tax-exempt bonds. Well, the recovery zone facility bonds are a segment of the private activity bonds that can be tax-exempt if you meet the right conditions. And generally, the conditions are that you cannot use it to buy land. It's only for either primarily equipment. You can do building renovation, but there's the rules on building renovation are pretty tight and make it a little bit difficult to do that. But the primary purpose that we've identified for the facility bonds are for businesses, manufacturers, people like that have a significant equipment cost that they need to incur. They can use these facility bonds, issue them tax exempt, which is a significant savings to them, and then they have to spend the money in the recovery zone. So that's why the first step has to be establishing this recovery zone. So that's what this resolution will do. It basically finds that there are sufficient conditions under the Stimulus Act because there's been an increase in unemployment from 4.3% to 9.7% since December of 2007. And then there's been significant decrease in building permits, and there's also been significant increase in home foreclosures. So those are, you don't have to have but one of those factors, and you've got two or three and different. So from that standpoint, that's what the resolution would do. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
What's the catch?
There's no real catch. The catch is you've got to have a project that's ready to go, because you've got to issue the bonds by the end of the year, and you actually, as the mayor said, you really have to do a lot of stuff between now and May 1st to be able to get your allocation approved by the state, because the state has to sign off by May 1 on your allocation, or your allocation basically reverts back to the state and they can redistribute it in any way they choose. So there's no real catch except that you've got to have a project that's really ready to go. It's not one where you can start.
School.
If it's ready to go, if it's something that's ready to go, that you could get your funding lined up, get all the, you've got to have your bank lined up, you've got to have whomever you're going to use to process, to handle your underwriting, whatever. All that has to be lined up so that you can get your approval. So that's the real catch, is you've got a very short window. And as the mayor said, the question is, are there really
any projects that are that close that you could really do and have the ability to utilize these bonds. If they go back to the state, that doesn't mean you can't get them back. You just have to go through the process of asking the state to reallocate it to you. And in
So
that
if you don't have
situation-
anything, so if you don't have anything on the table by May 1st,
right,
then
it goes to the state.
it goes to the state anyway.
And
so
the
we're-
state then gets to decide how to use it. The mayor's thought was you go ahead and designate the recovery zone, and that way you'll be ready if a project comes along between now and then and you're ready.
And so the whole county would be considered the
That's
recovery
correct.
zone.
That's correct. You're not selecting any particular
So
area.
any municipality within the county then
Could come in and do it.
have the opportunity to
That
do
is
it.
correct. And the county can sub-allocate, basically allocate a portion of the authority to a municipality.
We're just a conduit again, and then they're responsible. So.
That's right. But the first step, you have to designate the recovery zone. That's because you get the allocation under the Stimulus Act. You're the body that has to make that designation. So the mayor's thought was you do countywide, that way you've got the maximum flexibility.
And what's the payback?
Well, if you issue the development bonds, you get a 45% interest cost rebate. So the federal government basically pays you part of your interest costs, and that's why those are pretty attractive right now. Is because the spread between taxable and tax exempt is pretty close, and when you take that, you'll pay a little more with the taxable, but when you get the rebate, you actually save. It fluctuates.
This is not one lump sum in those. It could be spread out
Correct.
a numerous amount of ways and all kinds of.
That's correct.
Yeah,
There's nothing that says you have to do one project. You can do as many as you can get through the process in the time. The real challenge will be getting through the process to get the state approval. You have to submit an application to them by May 1. So they can do that.
Are there no parameters that say it has to be something more defined than the entire county? Because when you first started talking, I thought, oh, I would just claim the whole county, and that's exactly what you said.
And the reality is, a lot of communities have done that. They have, as long as you can make a good faith finding that your county is suffering from these conditions generally.
Is there any chance that this, because I know the chamber's job is to sell Rutherford County, is there any chance that this tarnishes our image at all by saying, hey, we're a recovery zone and we're out there trying to recruit white collar industry and all, and now we're saying, well, on one day he's sitting there trying to tell somebody how great it is in Rutherford County, and now we're got to tell how bad it is in Rutherford County. We're eligible for these funds, and in a way I hate to say that out loud because we're in a lot better shape than a lot of the more rural counties are, but I'm all for, whatever deal we can get somebody.
When the federal government went through and made these allocations, they did those based on certain criteria, and Rutherford County met those criteria. So the reality is what you're doing is taking advantage of the federal government's allocation process that says you're eligible for these. I mean, Paul can answer whether he thinks it's going to hurt.
We've had several conversations. As a matter of fact, there may be some companies that could take advantage of this, and I would hate not to be able to do it. In a way, it could be an incentive to go ahead and.
Right. So how many counties in the state of Tennessee then
that are in this?
They all have an allocation.
Most of them. I think there's a few that don't. I might have if I had the list.
No, I'm just off the top of your head. I was just thinking,
most
man, if we're in a recovery zone, heck, the whole state.
No, here's the list.
Here's the list. It's a page and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. It's most of the counties in Tennessee. It's not all of them.
Because I'm with Commissioner. I think we're pretty fortunate here in Middle Tennessee compared to just one county away or something.
There's no question if you were trying to compare this county with that county, that there are other counties that have a lot worse situation, but that's really, a lot of those only got a very small allocation, and so they can't really use it. They don't have enough money really to create. The cost of issuing bonds eats up any savings you get, and so for them it's really not helpful. What you really have, which not many do, is a very large allocation, so that helps a lot.
There's not a fee in Rutherford County, so to speak, but if, say, Smyrna or Eagleville or something wanted to jump in on this, as long as they got a plan, then that's their issuance of the whole package deal.
They would handle all the costs.
We're just a conduit.
One of the things that came up in our Economic Development Committee meeting with the chamber, but one of the communities asked, could you do equipment like fire trucks? And so that is equipment that you could do if you, again, that's one of the things that, that people are looking at is using equipment.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yeah, I got several questions. On one about a distressed area, so you said that had a large amount of bankruptcies. What would be done in foreclosures? Okay. But what is something that would be done in that area that they're considering? You have it.
There's not. You don't have to. The bonds do not have to address curing the problem. The bonds are only, the recovery zone is an area where those problems are occurring, and then you can use these bonds for whatever. The idea is you're going to stimulate economic activity by, building things or building public improvements, or you're going to stimulate a private business to get new equipment and hire people. So that's really what it's not a direct cure kind of situation. It's really, we want to identify that there are problems in these certain areas that stimulating economic recovery would fix.
And who's responsible for the payment of these bonds?
Well, it depends. Differing situation for two types of bonds. If you've got facility bonds, which are generally like the private activity bonds, where the industrial board issues them. Generally, in those kind of situations, the private business pays those back through their revenues. That's a revenue stream kind of bond. So in 99.9% of those, you're going to have the private industry totally on the hook, and there will be no recourse against the county or the city or whoever is the issuer. The industrial board will be the issuer on a non-recourse basis. On the economic development bonds, which are really just a way to issue taxable bonds, just like you would issue for a school or a road or work, that would be whoever decides, whatever governmental entity decides they want to issue those bonds. So if the county wanted to build a road, the county would be on the hook. If the city of Murfreesboro wanted to build the road, the city would be on it. It would be whoever elected to issue them. So this doesn't impact responsibility for payment at all. It just sets the preconditions for a potential issuer to be able to come and issue it.
And by not accepting this tonight, then that means we lose it. There's no.
Well, you got between now and May. I mean, you might be able to do it before then, but the likelihood of being able to put everything together, if you didn't go ahead and designate the area now, would be pretty difficult.
I move to accept the request.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Bullen, seconded by Commissioner Jernigan. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin?
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes.
Commissioner Ely?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Gentlemen, staying in section 8 of your notebooks, we have a request for a resolution authorizing the issuance of revenue bonds by the Health and Educational Facilities Board for Ascension Health. Mr. Baker, Mr. Bolden, and Mr. Jones? If you will join us, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At our last meeting, the HEW, we were asked to consider the issuance of $200 million of bonds for the Ascension Health Project, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. The board looked at the project and subsequently approved the request, which must be approved by the county commission ultimately. This is for a maximum of $200 million on it. A little bit to be determined as to how much of it they will need, but I think it goes without saying, I'm sure you're all familiar, that this does not obligate Rutherford County as far as any financial obligations or such as that but I think it goes without saying. But that seems to come up every now and then. But we have here Mr. Sumner Bolin, who our board attorney. Mr. Steve Gilmore is here with Ascension. So we will be open for any questions or more information you need or whatever.
Let me just ask one question. Does this, will these bonds be issued solely for this particular location, or will other locations be involved?
That's applicable to the Middle Tennessee Medical Center.
Okay. It's bigger than I thought.
I think the project is about $276 million.
Okay.
If I remember correctly.
Make a motion to approve the request.
Commissioner Schaefer, thank
Second.
you, and seconded by Commissioner Sandlin. Any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes.
Commissioner Ely.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bolden. And Mr. Baker, while you are here, at our January meeting, several of us had received an email, and it was called to our attention by Commissioner Jordan in terms of companies that had received a tax abatement and whether or not they were living up to the requirements. And the committee wanted to have some discussion with you as to how that is enforced by the IDB board.
Okay.
And I hope you have seen that email.
I have.
Good.
Of course, tax abatement for incentives, it goes back, I think one of the first ones that was ever done in this county was with the Nissan Corporation when they first came here, and things have been done under different arrangements under it. In 2004, we approached the commission and asked for the authority to make these arrangements, provided they met certain criteria. Mainly that after we evaluated them, that there would be at least a 3-to-1 benefit to cost arrangement under it. So that we have worked under that assumption on it and considered every deal. We would have not even considered an arrangement that didn't meet at least a 3-to-1 benefit to cost arrangement. After having met that criteria, basically there are three things that go a long ways towards determining what a company is doing. One is the number of employees employed, the investment that they make, and their payroll. They are the three things that we look at primarily to determine, what are we getting for what we're giving. And I think the commission is certainly in their right to expect that if we give tax abatement on it, that the companies that we give it to live up to that under it. We have a contract that is designed by our attorney, so it's a pretty good one, that in effect says what they will do and everything, and they must report to us annually the fact that they have employed so many people, have such payroll, made such an investment on it. And we've been operating under that arrangement certainly since 2004. Before that, there were other arrangements made under it, and they were approved by the county commission, if you remember, before that time. So since that time, we've worked these arrangements. We've had every now and then Sumner has to prod the company to get their paperwork in. And frankly, the prod is if you don't get your paperwork in and meet what you said you're going to, we're going to withdraw the tax abatement. Seems like that gets the paperwork in pretty quick when you do that. So, so since 2004, we've operated under that arrangement and said there are annual reports that they must file with us. Sumner has a complete list of all this. He monitors this for the board and under it. And I don't think there's any question if they don't meet it, what they said they were going to meet, we would withdraw their tax abatement.
Who vouches for the accuracy of the report turned in?
Most of those reports are part of what you have to report to the state and the federal government under it. So that kind of says if somebody's going to falsify those reports, they'd probably be taking their life in their own hands. But It's more or less public reporting arrangements that that companies have to report.
Anybody wanted to see those documents could?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, to date, we haven't had any companies that have not fulfilled their end of the contracts, I assume.
We did have one that didn't, and it's a company, it just didn't happen, is what it amounted to. We wiped the deal clean, and they went away.
Well, some discussion on this that we can't actually, with the times that we're going through, production may be down on making an air conditioner or whatever it may be, because there's not many houses built and so on and so forth, so then you don't have as many employees. But the point is, well, we understand that, but if you didn't reach and keep that goal, whatever that goal was, on employees, then you were just taken off and you'd have to pay your full taxes. And so that's where it come into I think that point. And then with Nissan in the full-time temporary positions compared to full-time, I guess, benefit employees, because they're going through a job service kind of thing, whatever, so they don't have health insurance and blah, 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 and blah, 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 the other things that go along with that. And that was one of the big questions right there. And so I don't know if there's a difference or a clarification there of, it's always been kind of foggy with me anyway.
We attempted to address that in the recent Nissan deal. If you'll recall, the original Nissan deal was not tied at all to employment numbers or wage or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I remember him saying that night it was going to be 1,200 full-time or 1,300 full-time benefited jobs through Nissan, not through a subsidiary or job service kind of thing or whatever. And that was great. I'm proud to hear that. And we can't go back on other things that wasn't put into that in lieu of tax program. But if it was in the 2004, I think that was where a couple of commissioners were coming from, then it needs to be held up.
We did have one company that the market just went out from under them.
Sure.
And they didn't come to us with a bag of tricks. They just the market went out from under them. They didn't need the employees. They didn't need the things. They just went away. We withdrew the tax abatement.
I guess if a company came up, say 10% short on employees, they could always come back to IDB and cut another deal and explain, say, hey, the economy's gone straight downhill. It's going to take us 2 years longer to get up to speed, and they'd have every opportunity to amend that deal and start from scratch, more or less.
We'll listen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it has to come back through this body too.
Yeah, come back through and get reapproved.
Yeah.
Not unless you want it to.
Or it didn't meet.
If we meet the 3-to-1, then it benefit the cost ratio.
I think there's something at least that made me think about it when we got this email, and not saying they're not or anything, but it was around General Mills was about one of the last ones I think that went through the full commission in the city council, whatever. But I used to be in the food industry, and I know it's very cyclical. It's up and down and up and down, and is it, and I don't know if they had an employee deal there. I know they put in the refurbishing and the expansions and all that, so they'd have to bring in some, but most of them, there's got to be some that, overall, if they meet it, that there's can be short terms when they drop back.
And some of the abatements, of course, already played out. They've met the time frame on it. Let me regress 1 minute to Commissioner Bowden. Randall Matlock is on our board, and basically he and Sumner were the ones that came up with making sure we were comfortable with the criteria that they reported, and I think you're probably aware of Randall Matlock's abilities. So, but he and Sumner came up as to what we should be looking at to see that they were living up to what they said they were going to do, and so that's where the criteria came from.
Well, I think that's worked well for us. I remember being a steering when y'all first proposed that. And that's really taken away before there, this deal was this way and this one was this way. And I mean, we've got consistency there. We know what's being offered, time after time. There's no question. And if there is a question, you're bringing it to us. So, I appreciate what y'all done with that.
It's cut the time frame down dramatically from how long it used to take to go through the commission in the city, if it was in a city, this type thing. So, and that's got to be good with y'all and the companies that are coming in.
Well, the chamber, of course, does the heavy lifting as far as negotiating with the prospective companies and such as that. So basically, they come to us with, here's a company that can do this, this, and this, and what do we want to do for them? And so it does make it work a little quicker.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Jernigan.
Well, the commission appoints the board members on this board, and I think they've done an outstanding job. And anytime we've asked them to come before us, they've fully explained everything, just like they have tonight. I don't know what else you could ask anybody to do.
Yeah, I'm the one that brought this up, I guess, last month, because I got that email that a bunch of us got, and I appreciate you coming and talking about this, because apparently some of these communities are making a deal and never looking back. And I didn't think we were in that position, and you've assured me tonight we aren't, and stuff, and it just shows that you guys are doing a good job, and I'm satisfied completely.
Me too. But transparency in government is always good for everybody, though, too.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the information.
Thank you,
Jim. Gentlemen, Section 8, again, a resolution authorizing a 2010 home grant application. This is something that we apply for every year. Sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't.
2009, we applied and we did not get anything, so we're applying for the 2010 home grant.
Motion to approve.
Second.
And that, of course, is to authorize the mayor to sign the appropriate documents. Commissioner P., Commissioner Sandlin, thank you. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen.
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan.
Yes.
Commissioner P.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin.
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Yes.
Commissioner Eagle.
Yes. The next item, we have a request for approval of Safe Exchange Grant Program application. Ms. Hobbs. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, last but not least.
The cream of the crop at the end.
Well, what can I tell you? We are asking the commission tonight to once again approve our application for a federal grant. This is the same grant that we talked to y'all about last year. We applied for it last year. We're not awarded it, but we are not thwarted, and we're going to try again. So this is a federal grant through the Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women. And this will create a partnership between the county and the Exchange Club Family Center, the Domestic Violence Center. And basically what this grant does is just improve the services that are available to victims of domestic violence, and most importantly for their children to have safe visitation services with that offending parent. It supports the facility, the providers of the service, also creates a part-time county position that would be fully funded by the grant to coordinate services between the Family Center, the Domestic Violence Program, Pam Phone's office, and anybody else in the county who's providing services for children in this regard, so that we're really sort of wrapping services around these families and really providing a more comprehensive plan for these children. And so the grant is a 3-year grant. It would be about $900,000 over those 3 years, and then there's a 5-year renewal afterwards that we think we have a pretty good chance of getting. So it's not something that would come and go within a year, and it would hopefully take us through about 8 years, of solid funding for this. And Faye Elam with the county will be coordinating the grant process. So it's just permission from this body for us to make application for this grant.
Commissioner Sandlin, thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Jernigan.
Is there any match or any
No, the
And-
complete, it's
And what, are there any employees that would be brought in, and when the grant runs out, then what would happen to those employees?
there's a one part-time position that would be created, and we're hoping that even after the 8 years, there's, you know, we can still do that 3-year cycle again. So, and we know other organizations, the Family Center in Florida, for example, has had this for about 12 years. So we're actually hoping that this will be sort of ongoing.
One
But
part-time doesn't hurt, doesn't
that's
involve
right.
being there as much as 8 full-time or something like that.
It's still left upon the Exchange Family Center or all of the above other
Right.
folks that are
To
involved
find, right, to continue to find
to
funding.
continue. We're just, again, the conduit of the grant.
Right, recipient of the funds.
Yeah.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Ely.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I'd like to share a brief story. She said last but not least. Sometimes that can backfire on you. In my career as an educator, I was conducting a major meeting, handing out certificates at a large banquet with a large number of people there. And without thinking, I said last but not least, and the last person in line weighed close to 400 pounds.
Oh, she doesn't.
I will keep that story.
Well, but we do have one more item of business under other business. We need to approve an advance for flexible spending account. And Mrs. Nolan will explain what we need to do for that.
In September 2009, we requested an advance of $75,000 from the employee insurance to the flexible benefits plan, thinking that that would help us through this first part. What caused us problem is that the third-party administrator who's going through this needed about $58,000 for us to hold in an account. We thought we could hold it in our account, but they want it in theirs, so we can't make payment out of that. So we'll get it at the end, but we just don't get it at the beginning when we need to make these payments. So we're requesting a $50,000 advance from the insurance fund to the flexible benefits.
Motion approved.
Commissioner Jordan, seconded by Commissioner Sandler. Discussion?
Just, this is something that's always, those type programs, I've always wondered about. All the money doesn't come in till the end, till
I know.
December sometime, you know, and
But a lot of people use their
up before
procedures
that,
at the
yeah.
first, which causes cash flow problems.
Mhm.
So that's what this is really for.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Bullen,
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan,
Yes.
Commissioner P,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandlin,
Aye.
Commissioner Schaefer,
Yes.
Commissioner Ely.
Yes. Anything else that needs to come before the committee? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.